Very good. Awesome. Let me the good old share my screen and hope it works on Zoom. Here we go. You never want to see that. Actually. All right. Awesome. So over the past, well, actually since MCP came out, we've dabbled with it quite a lot, myself and our engineering team. And I felt like from the beginning, one thing that needed to be done is try to make it a bit more accessible to users of MCP and not engineers. But I'm an engineer at heart, and that means I still made the system for engineers anyways. And first, one thing that's cool about me is you don't know how to pronounce my name if you go to LinkedIn, but I put it here, which is fine. I answer to anything really that, kind of resemble that. But I just figured I try to help every Guillaume in the world here. What's StackOne? So StackOne is a AI integration gateway. We help agents and SaaS connect to other integrations. So we provide a bunch of tools, help around security, permissioning, etc. But I'm actually not really here to talk about StackOne. So I'll move on to the rest of the talk. I'm here to talk about MCP and what we did with MCP. So at StackOne, as we grew, we raised money, we used that money, and we hired people. We realized that everyone wanted to connect whatever they used as LLM clients, as agents, with integrations. At the time, early on, there was no MCP. So actually what we did early on is we started kind of creating our own ChatGPT that would have a lot of tool calls and function calls and try to create all those function and tool calls. And that was a true ball ache. So when MCP came out, the first day I was like, what the fuck is this? The first months, I still didn't get it. But then once I started adding support for remote MCP, HTTP based MCPs and not just standard input-output MCPs, we realized we could refactor everything we had done. We could become completely client agnostic and create loads of MCPs and tools that our team could use, right? And what we knew is people use all type of clients, even within one company, at least ours. Just people have their preferences. I use Raycast, I use Cursor, I use Cloud Code, I use ChatGPT, I use Claude, because they all have their nice strengths and use cases. They all kind of work with MCP sometimes, depending on the MCP standard. And for that, that meant we needed good MCP servers, right? And we saw that screenshot earlier. MCP helps that, but MCP is not the only standard. We had agent to agent. We had IBM, I think, did ACP, and then was like, no, actually, ACP is going to join agent to agent. So if you learned ACP, you're happy now. And then there is agency as well, right? The good old XKCD meme applies to everything, especially here. And I'm sure there's a dozen or more. The point is, though, MCP largely won today, the brain share, if not the market share. And I'm going to try a bit here. Who has used an MCP server? All right, I would say the majority of the room. Cool. Who has built an MCP server? Okay. A sizable minority, more than most audiences have done this at. And I think it is hard to build MCP servers, for sure. It's messy. And actually, there was a couple tweets, like, have you ever found good and remote MCP servers? Good question. Even the one built by the underlying companies, like I think Jira has one, Fireflies has one, etc., will mess up your context, will not have the tools you want. The tools won't behave like you expect. But more importantly, it's one of those places where a lot of people talk about MCP, apparently build on MCP, but very few people use it. I've talked to a lot of companies, they've built an MCP. Who uses it? Their own employees, every time. So we thought maybe we can make it a bit easier, at least for our own staff and maybe for other people. And as an engineer, you're like, let's just fix it. I have a problem, let's fix it, right? So we wanted a reliably remote hosted MCP servers, something that's quick and easy, works every time, doesn't disconnect, supports the latest standard, which initially we built it with SSE, then we had to rebuild it with HTTP streams. We wanted it to be open sourced because we recognized we couldn't build all the MCP servers ever in the world. But we did want that platform to have MCP server itself, not to reference other open source MCP servers maintained by other people, which may be out of date or in worst case scenario, an attack vector. And we wanted the developer experience to be AI first. MCPs largely are, we want essentially any engineer to be able to add an MCP server super easily, whatever language they know. They shouldn't have to care, they shouldn't have to really code. Ultimately, we want it to be extendable and customizable. I have a strong belief that MCP servers should be personal. Tools are personal. I don't know if everyone agrees with that, but that's a long-term vision of what we built. And also we made it free because I couldn't be bothered adding payment. This was too much work. So we built something called disco.dev, total side project, half an engineer's time. But then everyone in the company started adding MCP servers to it that they were using, even non-engineers. So I'm going to try to demo it, and we're going to pray to the demo gods that this is going to work. Okay. So just earlier, literally while sitting, I prompted Claude Code. I did that just to see how much time it would take. And I even give some API key. You can take that API key. I'm going to kill it just after. We use Luma for events, whatever, the company. So like, hey, let's build a Luma MCP server. That would be cool to see what events are coming up, to see who's signed up to the events, whatever the Luma API really supports. So I created a dummy calendar for this, created an API key. And all I did was create a new collector for Luma. I pasted a markdown file, which has a specific instruction on writing a connector that actually we wrote not for an agent, but for developers. Turns out the agents are also great developers, who knew? And I gave the credentials. I also actually gave some docs. I don't know why it's not showing here. I think I did. And you can see, search some things in the docs. It looked at the setup of the repo, actually to understand like, okay, how is it set up? It's a TypeScript file every time. And then it created a bunch of stuff in the format that it was expected. Oh, I hope it's expecting because we're going to try it. And largely this code base is all TypeScript, Zod for schema validation. And there's one thing that's going to do if you look at each tool. So first you're going to see something around the credentials that you may need and the description of the tools. It's all in .schemas, etc. because we actually then use that to render a UI. And I don't know, update event, get guest. I hope this exists. And then list calendar events, etc. So I'm going to allow the edits. It's going to do its things. I'm going to hedge my bet in case it doesn't. And I'm actually going to try to execute and run some MCP servers here. So there's a bunch of connectors. There's like 40 or 50 in there, all coded. There's one called documentation that we did where we indexed a bunch of documentations so that we could use it anywhere for when we're coding. And in this case, this is how you run a connector. This is running locally. Everything you do in this repo eventually can be hosted on a disco.dev, but every MCP server you build, you can run locally. You don't have to go through the disco.dev. So in this case, it's going to run an MCP server on localhost. I already connected to it earlier, so I'm kind of spoiling it, but I'm connecting. I have a bunch of tools, search docs, get provider key. I use Postman. Actually, I don't know what you use to just check the health. It's quite easy. It's great. I can see the tools. I can even call the tools. But obviously, if I launch Claude, oh, sorry, reflex. If I launch Claude and I did MCP and I looked at localhost, just reconnected to make sure I have the right one. Look at the tools. It's also all there. Great. That's how you run one. If you have credentials to pass, you pass the credentials. What I use to run one is actually ask Claude to run it. It looks at the doc, figures out the command it needs to do, and figures out where the credentials need to go and runs it. Way easier. And here we're going to see what happens. Okay, it's testing stuff. It's trying to make tests because for every server, we got TypeScript tests as well. Let's see. I'm hoping it eventually works. In the meantime, what I can show you is a disco.dev experience. This is Disco. Essentially, you have a bunch of integration. You can go to an integration. We made a StackOne one. I don't even remember what it does. But we have like a bunch of the ones that are in the repo that you can check, that you can update. You can see how it's coded. We have, for example, Fireflies. I probably already connected Fireflies. But if I connected it, it asks for the credential. We try to give some guides, whatever we can about it. The reason we made a Firefly server is actually because the normal Fireflies one didn't do like a good get meetings by email. We had to redo one. That's the problem with MCP servers at the moment. And when you connect one, you essentially, they're listed here. And I could make 5 MCP servers for Fireflies. I would have unique server URLs, and I could turn off and on tools for each of them. So if I wanted, I could actually share a Jira MCP server with certain tool to someone else. It wouldn't have access to tools, or it would have access to tools. I can generate 100 MCP servers realistically. It doesn't cost us much, so it's fine. And that MCP server, you can just click on, have it in cursor, let's say. Oops, sorry, I got the, here we go. And it's asking me to add it, install, connected. I got my 3 tools. And if for some reason I want cursor to talk to Firefly's recording, I could ask it there. But this is kind of the streamlined UX we wanted, just something one click, or customer support can use it, anyone can use it. And then Firefly is very popular for sales. My co-founder and myself, etc. I'd be like, hey, I had a Fireflies meeting, create the Jira tickets for it, etc. So let's see what happened. Claude says it's working. MCP server. So if Claude says it, I tend to believe it. There is more tools than I thought I would add. Let's see. So what I'm going to do now is actually kill my previous MCP server so that I can test it locally. And I just, okay. And I'm going to run it. Oh, actually, let's ask Claude. I can't remember the CLI command. I'm too lazy. Oh, actually, oops. I think I have some docs for that as well, if I can't read it. Didn't give it the credentials, so let's see if it works. I need some credentials. Here we go. I think you might have been faster. Maybe someone was faster than me at using those credentials too. I hope they still work. Whatever's my Luma account. Here we go, ban run server, API key. That's how you put the secret, apparently. I didn't have to write JSON in a string, which I like. Spawned it. Let's see if it worked. Oh, let me disconnect the previous one. It does say it spawned it. This is why you don't do live demos. Let's see. Let's figure it out. Let's see what's running. Well, there is an error in the server. So normally what I do here is no, I don't think so. I love dashes. It works. The more dashes you add, the better. That's how it works. Well, actually, physical server. So normally what happens, runs locally, just like the documentation, you test it, fine. What we built, and I don't want to demo it here, exactly to handle like the testing of MCP servers. We built actually another useful tool. It's in the same package, I think. We have an app that is MCP test that we built to test an MCP server. Because of this, like, what do you do when it doesn't work? I could ask Claude, if the MCP server was actually running, I could ask Claude to iterate on the tools. MCP server here doesn't even run, because in this case, there is some issues. Actually, you might be right. Yeah, that's fine. And if we look at the code that it generated, we can see the Luma TypeScript file, the get events, the connector config. What I can see here is it's asking an API key, which is good, good sign. We add the connector in the list of connectors available, which I think is what Claude realized it was missing. And yeah, forget. I'm not even going to try to wait for it. I'm going to run again. I think it is. No. I do think I'm messing up something. And oh, that was a new line? That would be a shame if that was the case. Yeah. Listen to. Well, if that doesn't work, I will stop it here and I will let you try the live version instead. Normally what I would do here is I'd do a PR, send it. I definitely want to test it first. And if you look at the mcp-connectors repo, you'd see, I think a few people have started making PRs recently. And we check it once in a while. If there is no security issues, we merge it. They appear in the UI. That's it. This does show that, unfortunately, code doesn't get everything right. So you still need devs. And I think some people are happy here. I don't want to debug the TypeScript in front of you. That would be embarrassing for me. But I would encourage you to try it. I tried this one just before, one-shotted it. Doesn't happen all the time. And I think it's the easiest way to create MCP servers. Obviously, sometimes you have to tweak the tools. We're going to probably keep tweaking it. More importantly, you can just, it's open source, just take whatever, fork it, do whatever you want with it. And I will explain a bit of how it works. And I think one of the interesting part of this is that we used all of like Cloudflare services to build this. And what's great about it is it cost us realistically nothing. Not only because we got credits, very, very cheap to run. We use Cloudflare Workers and we use durable objects. So every credential ends up in its own durable object. And when an MCP command gets executed, the worker runs the code and injects the credentials on durable object at that point. And infinitely scalable, super fast, never had an issue. HTTP streams work fast. I actually don't use Cloudflare in the rest of our architecture at StackOne, but this is an amazing use case. If you build MCP servers, I would shout out Cloudflare. And unfortunately, this is great for prosumers to use MCP, sucks for enterprise. A few things that don't work, like how do I manage permissioning of tool per user? How do I do that, right? Especially if the tool doesn't support OAuth. How do I handle context? Loads of tools maybe on MCP servers, loads of description. The result of an MCP tool call might fill your context. What do you do there, right? Every large enterprise SaaS is customizable in some way. So you want tools to behave differently. How can I use MCP if I'm developing a B2B agent? Like, and I want multi-tenants MCP. Good question. And what if I don't want to use MCP? Because I have a CLI, I can just like do tool calls on the CLI, right? Or I want to use A2A, whatever other reason. then that's actually what we do at StackOne, the main StackOne. We do stuff for enterprise and for like B2B SaaS. And ultimately, it is not by following the MCP specs. We kind of hack around the specs to make everything here work. What I would love to do is more of this kind of logic where a user types a prompt in Disco, I run Cloud Code in a server, hopefully it works better than this time around, passes the test, gets stored on R2, on Cloudflare, and then I could trigger a sandbox, a worker with that, and every user would have the ability of editing the tools, adding servers, and it's just their own. It's not in a open source repo, etc. I think vibe coding tools and integration is what's going to make MCP probably a bit more popular. If someone wants to build it, it's open source, so you can do it for me. That would be great. And you can see, I finished the slide quite quickly. It's actually Disco.dev. You can create new servers yourself. We are hiring for Disco and MCP, but this is still very much a side project to us. We use it internally. We give it for free. But we're hiring on AI research to actually develop fine-tuned models to do tool call more accurately than the leading models, which is fun. And overall, we help make agents use tools. We have a community as well. We've never done an event at Tessol, but it is a great space. We're doing a next one. It's not listed yet, in November at OpenAI's office. I think then you got a new office in London. It's going to be cool. But it's all about showing your own product. It has to be live. It has to be working. And then you get to just show it to the world. Usually we have 100, 200 people in there. Yeah, that's about it. I know I've probably run quite over, and I blame Claude for that. Any questions?